a quick story was that last year's Olympia, Derek came up to me after he won the Natural Olympia and goes, dude, can you sign my magazine? You told me a couple years ago that one day I was going to be on this stage and that championship was going to be mine. And the only reason I'm here is because I believed you. And of course I signed it and threw the pen because I was fucking pissed and he took it from me. But
all right, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Chris with Desire for Iron Fitness. We have a super awesome treat today. This is the first episode of Natty Chats, and I don't have the applause button on the soundboard, so all right, there we go. There's our so with me today, I am honored. It's a pleasure to have some true legends in the sports, Derek Joe, Colin Congo, Brandon Lirio, and none other than the legend himself, Philip Ricardo. Just discussing the beauty, I don't need to have all these things in my hands here, the beauty and the art of natural bodybuilding itself, the benefits, and maybe some cases there might be some, I want to say drawbacks, but some of the challenges that being a natty does have with it. And I guess that's pretty much where we'll start off with. So brief introductions, obviously. Phil, please go. Age before beauty, I guess.
Yeah, I'm definitely the oldest in this group. My name is Philip Ricardo. I've been competing for 30 years. I started in 1992. Retired Marine, 21 years. Been competing in pretty much almost every federation. Had a lot of success, obviously, in those federations, and it's just been a blessed career. And this year will be my final year of competing. This will be the last show, the Natural Olympia. And I'm just looking forward to going out with a bang and, just having some good conversation with some great guys here.
Outstanding. All right. Hey, Derek, please.
Derek Joe. Did my first show in bodybuilding in 2013 before Classic was a division. Then I came back 2018, did my first Classic show. Started competing in the INBA, PNBA in 2020. When I earned my pro card, and then won the Natural Olympia last year for the Classic Physique division. Philip Ricardo is my coach, so definitely blessed and honored to have him, working with him. But yeah, just excited to be at the Natural Olympia again this year and compete against and with all of these great athletes. Everybody's been looking amazing, so I know it's going to be a great show for the 25th anniversary amongst all divisions.
That's awesome. I didn't know that PNBA had been around that long. Brandon, please.
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Lirio, 3-time Mr. Natural Olympia for Classic Physique, 2-time Mr. Universe. I've held just about every major title there is in the INBA, PNBA. I also have a pro card with the NGA, INBF, and nationally qualified with the MPC years ago that I never took advantage of for obvious reasons, seeing as how I'm only 5'5" and 150 pounds on stage. I actually did 11 years in the Air Force as a meteorologist with a specialty in space physics. And after that, I opened my own coaching, and now I live in Connecticut with my wife and my 2 16-month-old boys who had a meltdown right before I went in here. So hopefully when I open the door and go back downstairs, my wife is still married to me. And I'm just excited, for this year. I'm just excited to get out there and as Phil and Derek have already said, this is a big event for the INBA, PNBA, and we're just trying to make it as memorable as possible. So I'll also do a quick plug for my YouTube series, World's Strongest Everyman with Iron Man Magazine, which has a new episode every 2 to 3 weeks. And we also just started a Generation Iron Fitness Network podcast called the United States of America. So tune in every Wednesday for that, anywhere you get your podcasts. And let me know what you want to hear about, because I want to talk about it.
Outstanding. Well, he goes by iPad on Zoom, but his real name is Colin Congo. So
yeah, sorry. First time using this device. I was just like, oh, let me try this on my iPad. And now you don't get a name. So sorry about that. Colin Congo, I've been competing since 2009. Started in regular bodybuilding in the NPC. Competed there at the national level for 5-6 years. And, I had a lot of, top 5 placings there, top 3 placings. And then, kind of came to the realization that even if I turn pro in this organization, it's kind of it, right? So So decided to, thankfully men's physique division came out in 2012 or so, made the transition to that division because it fit my physique a little bit better, and competed again in NPC for a few years. Finally made my transition to the Natty organization, and I chose the INBA PNBA back in 2017, earned my pro card the same year. Was fortunate enough to, in my third pro show, win the Natural Olympia in 2018 in the men's physique category. And I've been trying to get that title back ever since. And I'm really looking forward to getting up there this year because I think this is going to be the year for that. So I'm excited to potentially earn that title back. Professionally, I work in law enforcement. Been doing so for 13 years. Prior to that, I was an airline pilot. I still fly professionally for the government. And that's me.
Outstanding. Well, I'll give my brief introduction. You guys are all amongst greatness. I've been competing since 2019. So honestly, Phil, Brandon, and Colin and I have talked a lot. And for those who don't know, bodybuilding is something I started way later on in life. I'm 48 years old now. I just turned 48. And, natural bodybuilding became the vehicle by which I got really healthy. I was on a bunch of blood pressure pills and all that other stuff. And I was probably just one Big Mac away from a stroke. Met Dave Bowers, who is an NPC promoter. He was doing the Indy Pro and just retired from the business. But that's what was the catalyst, got me involved in the sport. I stayed natty because like Colin, I'm in law enforcement 23 years. I got 2 years to go and a year and a half to go and I can retire, and I am definitely doing that. So yeah, it was just something to do. And honestly, the sport, all the benefits that have come along from being the 260-pound guy with the 44-inch waist to now I don't know what I weigh right now, but definitely not 240 or 260. The benefits have just outweighed anything to where I just can't give up this lifestyle like ever. I'll be that 70-year-old guy in a Speedo and a spray tan and enjoying it. You know what I mean? So, but I've embraced the lifestyle. I've fallen in love with it. And you guys coming on board today for this chat is truly a blessing. So thank you. The first thing I wanted to talk as everybody, the first second you talk about bodybuilding, the first word or the first term that everyone comes up with is using steroids and everything else, as if this is the only sport that does that. However, at least in the Mr. Olympia ranks, it's pretty much a given and a known. But be that as it may, what was the reason that you guys chose to stay natural, knowing that the super big paydays are just, there's no chance for it necessarily?
Actually, so I just did a podcast about this, and
okay.
What always cracks me up is you just mentioned, because the prize money, that's what dazzles everybody, is the prize money.
Right.
Look, I'm just going to say it. You're not going to fucking beat Big Ramy. Like, if you think that you're going to use the steroids and you're going to win $500,000, like, you're not. So right. That's not the reason why I didn't do it, but that's my argument to other people is like, listen, just because that's how they got there doesn't mean that's only how they got there. So if your only reason for taking that is the prize money, that's like saying, well, if I, get laser eye surgery like Tiger Woods, I'm going to be the best golfer. What? No, you're not. So realistically, I think that too many people are caught up on that money thing. And realistically, like, let's take, for example, somebody who was in the IFBB, John Meadows. He didn't make his money bodybuilding. He never placed in the top 10 at the Olympia, right? Really made his money almost being a subject matter expert and being in the sport as a very well-trusted coach. So what I would say to people is, listen, if you're dazzled by the money, find the other revenue streams. None of us on this stream right now are making our money from winning bodybuilding shows, whether they be natural or not. And I can tell you right now, our chances of having won or winning the Natural Olympia is less than 1%. If you think you're going to win the untested Olympia, you can add a couple zeros after the period before you put the one. That I always tell people that. Don't get dazzled by the prize money. It's not the incentive.
Yeah, something I would add to that is just kind of like right along the lines of what you're saying, is that even one thing that I tell folks, because about the prize money and kind of the enamor of the IFBB, I'm like, less than 5%, I'm just making this number up, right? This is my own statistic. 5% or less are people in the IFBB make their money off of bodybuilding, right? Everybody else, everybody's doing something else, whether it be personal training or selling meal plans or came out with an app or whatever that may be. So yeah, that check that, you know, that Big Ramy or Brandon Curry holds up at the end, that's cool and all, but you know, they're in the absolute anomaly of the IFBB of folks that are actually making money from posing on stage.
And not just that, but remember, they always say $1.4 million in prize money. Chris Bumstead, who most people agree is the good grace boy of the IFBB, because everybody likes his physique and everybody likes classic physique. Dude, with all of that good publicity, he made 30 grand winning in 2020. And I believe it was 40 grand in 2021. Okay. If you're second to Chris Bumstead, you're going to make like $15,000 for that show. Okay, even if it's $1.4 million, your cut of it is like you showed up at the office pool for the lotto and you're going to take your $5 and go get a coupon at the lunch counter. Like, it's not about the money. And I wish people would stop using that excuse.
I learn something new every day. Phil, you got anything to add on that?
No, I think I totally agree with Brandon and Colin. I think when I look at it, especially when I came up in sport, I was looking at magazines, you know, and I didn't even know about the money. And back then, when I did it back in the 90s, obviously, you know, there wasn't as much as, you know, the $500,000 prizes and Rolexes and Hummers and all that stuff. That didn't come till later on. I personally was trying to get into bodybuilding and get as, you know, good as I could, really because of that look. You kind of want that fame. You really look at the money, but it's really just being famous. The same thing with wrestling, you know, trying to be like The Rock or anyone that's bigger than life. And that's what those guys who take steroids are. They're bigger than life because they're taking these, you know, unnatural products to get them to that kind of physique. So that is probably the two things that, you know, we have to struggle with. You know, do you want to, you know, get these quick results that's going to, you know, supposedly maybe make you famous, make you stand out compared to any other human being on the earth? Or do you want to take it nice and slow and be healthy? And so those are the choices that I think most of us as natural bodybuilders kind of have to contemplate when we're doing this. It's not about, you know, being famous. It's not about making money. It's health, you know. So I think the majority of us that are here, we're doing it for healthy reasons. You know, we want to look good, you know, and we have that, you know, opportunity to compete on the stage where we can compete as natural bodybuilders and still get some kind of recognition and compete against each other. And we have a lot of respect for each other as well. When you're trying to do it the unnatural way, obviously, they're just trying to be as big as possible, be the freak show, and also try to stand out against everybody else, which causes a lot of, you know, animosity, a lot of jealousy, a lot of fighting, a lot of, you know, bickering and things like that. It's a totally different world when you have those guys versus the way we're doing it. And I think it's really more about that look, trying to be that freak show versus just trying to be the healthy way. And that's how I take it.
What about you, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, when you look at like whether you're going natty or not, I was always in sports as a kid. So I was football, basketball, track. That was my background. And I guess thinking about how you mentioned being in law enforcement, you know, obviously steroids and performance drugs, that's illegal. You can't do that. It was almost the same way for sports. So it was one of those things where, you know, to me, in my mind, I'm like, that's illegal. I can't do that. I can't touch that. I'd go to jail for that, like an actual drug. So being in sports coming up, it was never even a thought. Because my dream was to, you know, go D1, go to the NBA or NFL. So that was kind of my route coming up. And even when I was introduced to bodybuilding or as a kid looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger, I didn't know whether guys were using steroids or not. So even that, just being younger and more naive, just seeing a physique as impressive as that, in my mind, I just thought if I worked hard enough, I might be able to attain that naturally anyway. Right. So in the back of my mind, I was always thinking about what is my natural potential. And even when I started competing in bodybuilding, I was 26 years old at that point. So I say that to bring up that I wasn't as impressionable, maybe being 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, where there's all the social media and you have these illusions of what your physique could look like. So now getting into it, like Philip and the other guys mentioned, it's more about health, looking good. I'm in the best shape of my life now at the age of 36. So it's just continuing that and continuing to see where that natural limit is for yourself. And that's where, just staying natural is obviously the way to go.
Right. You said something that I think is really important, impressionable and like at 19 years old and something like that. I mean, I know we all go to the gyms and we see these, younger kids that within just a couple of months, all of a sudden they're just gigantic. And it's because they're running, enough gear to make Chris Bumstead, tell you, hey, bro, pump the brakes a little bit, which, by the way, I think Chris is the GOAT, but yeah, I understand, he's running stuff we're not. I get that. What advice would you give these kids before they even start? I mean, Brandon brought up Ollie brought up excellent points, but Brandon brought it up probably the most direct. And you're not going to become a millionaire doing this shit. And again, it's not necessarily just about the money. We know, Natty for Life, and you guys were doing that show, Dorian Yates gets up there and he says, when you're like in your 20s, you just don't give a rip, I guess my question is, what would you say to these youngsters that are just starting to get into the game?
I mean, it's simple. Like, if you take a look at all these guys who did do that, right? Even Dorian Yates, who was the first to say, like, yeah, when you're young, and he even says now for the first time ever in the last decade or so, like, I probably could have been kinder to myself. I probably could have done, things a little differently and maybe made myself a longevity cycle instead of what I did. But even when he released in Flex magazine in the late 90s, he said he released his stack that he was taking, and nobody believed him because it was so small. It wasn't nothing. I mean, it's still, there's some risk to it. How much, we don't really know because we're not allowed to study it. And that's the truth. But realistically, what he said was, even when I thought I could be the best in the world and I started on my cycles, no one believed me when I told them what I took because they had to take so much more. And so my argument to everybody else would be, listen to the guys who were the best in the untested federations telling you, you're going to die. Like, I don't understand. It's like, basically, if I were to ask Colin, hey, should I go to Somalia? He would be like, dude, you're going to die. And I would go, all right, well, he's in international law enforcement and I should probably listen to him. However, if I ask somebody who's never left rural Indiana, should I go to Jamaica? And they're like, dude, you're going to die. I'd be like, dude, you never even went to New York. Why would I listen to you? So my real, I make a lot of jokes because that's my defense mechanism, but realistically, it all boils down to this, right? If you don't know what it is, you have to talk to people that are not only trying to sell you something, but that are trying to sell you information. Right? If the information is, listen, kid, I'll be honest, you got a great structure, but give it another 4 or 5 years, take a look at what you look like, and then decide if you want to go test it or untest it. That's the guy you listen to, right? I'm not saying listen to him because he's offering you steroids, because obviously, like we all know, they're illegal. But realistically, if what we're talking about is, let's remove the veil, just like when it comes to, 10 years ago, people smoking marijuana, right? I mean, there's so many people who were doing it and they were just kind of keeping it hush hush. Let's remove the veil and say, listen, we know I'm a libertarian at heart. I know that general free consulting adults are just going to do whatever they want to do. So have the most available information. And the most available information is, listen, if you've never even gotten into a gym for more than a year, looked at a show, looked at what it takes to diet down, to cut, you're basically going, I am afraid that as I get older, I'm not going to be able to defend myself. So I should get an assault rifle and a doomsday cabin. There's a lot of steps in between, guy. You don't have to jump on the highway and immediately take the PCH down to Mexico. Like, relax.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So kind of get off the track of the gear, because I mean, there's enough of that to go on. What have been some of the more beautiful things that you've found by becoming a bodybuilder? What's been the greatest parts about it? I mean, what do you
let somebody else talk, because I don't want to be that guy.
Well, I guess since I've been competing the longest, I mean, for me, it's just the people I've met. It's been really cool to, I met you out of the blue, especially with social media, right, that you just reach out to me and we're able to talk about just sharing that fitness lifestyle and just being able to, enjoy what we do, enjoy the feeling of being in the gym and then getting on stage, which is pretty scary at first, obviously, when you have to be up there with your Speedo on and everything. But we're the 10% of the world, and that's being generous, obviously. But it's a whole different lifestyle, and it's something that we can all share together and be, proud that we've made that step. And people look at us as well and say that they're impressed with what we do, even though I'm sure we all feel like we're just kind of normal people. At least that's how I feel. But we stand out, and I think being a bodybuilder, you stand out amongst others. We have the discipline, we have the, a different look, obviously, to us, a different lifestyle. And it's just something that I'm very proud of to have done. And then for us to be as successful as we have been in it, it doesn't get any better. So it's just kind of an identity that personally have been able to achieve from this sport. I never thought in a million years I would have been at the level that I'm at. When I first started out, I was just like everybody else, very naive, like Derek said, looking at these magazines, thinking I could be Arnold or Sean Ray or Flex Wheeler. But, without taking anything, obviously I couldn't get to that level. But in my own right, I've, created something that I'm very proud of throughout all these years. And I think, all of us here have done the same thing. And you guys, the story is not over. Mine's almost over, but it's all good.
No, different chapter, bro. That's not over. Different chapter.
Right. Chapter, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's been, just more in addition to the people, obviously, because that's been a big part of it, just connecting with like-minded people from not just all over the country, but all over the world, and the opportunities that you have with the INBA, PNBA to compete in other countries, and vice versa, for them to come and compete at the Natural Olympia and other shows, and just being able to connect with those different cultures and different people. But, from the health standpoint, like I mentioned before, just feeling like I'm in the best shape and the healthiest I've ever been. I've noticed a lot of changes for the better, not just in how I look, but how my body feels mentally and physically, even at, a 36-year-old age, where most people my age are kind of, on the way downhill at that point in their life. So it feels good to know I'm on that right track for myself, and being around other people, sharing that with, and just continuing to improve on that. And then having the opportunity to learn more and share that with others as well. Cause I know a lot of us help, other clients and people that we work with, and our families, things like that. So there's a lot of information we can just continue to give and share as well.
Outstanding. How about Brandon? Everyone else is talking about their age, and I know you've been in the game for a while. So how old are you, bud?
35. I mean, everybody thinks I'm much younger than I am. I like to, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's old, but this is probably the first couple of years in my life where, like, I'll make a reference in a group of people who are much younger than me at the gym I work at, and nobody gets the like I mentioned, I was going to bring in a windbreaker suit like Sinbad, and everybody goes, fucking Sinbad. And I'm like, get away from me, get away from me. Like, but realistically, when it comes to the age aspect of it, right, I think that that's part of sort of what has kept me in that shape, in terms of, hey, not a lot of people know that I'm 35, 36. So realistically, when I started in this was bodybuilding in 2012, was kind of on a dare, and I didn't really take it seriously until like 2014. But I saw my friends in the military and how quickly they aged. And, I look, the military gave me everything. I'm very thankful for it. But if I was still in, I'd be divorced with the alcohol problem, and I'd be overweight. And so realistically, even now, right, we're in the last couple of weeks before the Natural Olympia, we're supposed to be in the suffer mode. And it is that way, like around 4 or 5 p.m. when the energy's running low and you still got stuff to do and programs to write for clients. But sure enough, 5 a.m., my alarm goes off every day. I'm super excited to get going to the gym is still the best part of my day. I've been doing this for, over a decade now, competing regularly, and it's still the best part of my day. I love it. And, what a quick story was that last year's Olympia, Derek came up to me after he won the Natural Olympia and goes, dude, can you sign my magazine? You told me a couple of years ago that one day I was going to be on this stage and that championship was going to be mine. And the only reason I'm here is because I believed you. And of course I signed it and threw the pen because I was fucking pissed and he took it from me, but it is what it is. That's the sport. So I'll remember that part forever. I'll remember the fact that when I was in high school, I was a relative nobody. And nowadays people want me to sign magazines and ask for my opinion. So that's enough for me, man.
Sweet. So Colin, I take it you're the youngest one out of the group then, eh?
That's absolutely not true.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
No.
Well, I thought you were.
Yeah, I'm older than both Brandon and Derek. I am 37.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a quote that I had heard early on in my bodybuilding career, if you will, was that bodybuilding is a sport that rewards the maturing athlete. So as you see a lot of other sports, certainly by the time you're at our age, there are very few people that are still around, right? Think about some of the big sports, right? Like people at 37, you're a dinosaur, right? But in bodybuilding, people sort of. I just was watching something yesterday, and Jay Cutler was talking about how he won his first Olympia at 34, right? And then you have a lot of other guys that went into their 40s. Think about like Philip, right? Who's dominated the sport in his 40s, right? So that is to that end. It's certainly a sport that our joints are getting older and all that stuff, right? And we're not doing the stuff that may prevent that aging process, with the joints and so forth. But we can just keep going, right? Until it gives out. And so that's one additional thing that I love about the sport. To kind of just quickly address your previous question, why bodybuilding, and because it's important for me that I'm a very results oriented guy. So a lot of folks set goals, right? But I'm like more the guy that is more focused on what's on the other side of that goal. Like, did I accomplish that, and how did I accomplish that, and the process that got me there, right? So bodybuilding enables me to set a goal and to see it through, right? And as cliche as it may sound, at the end of each, right now, as I enter a peak week here for another show, it really is a me versus me, right? Like, I'm comparing myself to how I looked this time last year. And I'll do that when I get on stage. I mean, it's from a judge's perspective, it's how I look versus the guys that stand next to me. But for me, it's like, really, like, Colin, what did you do to improve yourself, right? And thinking about that February afternoon, where Sunday afternoon in February, I absolutely didn't feel like going to the gym. But all I'm thinking about is what I do today is going to reflect when I get on stage in November. And so just keeping those things in mind and just being that results oriented person. And then, so that's sort of kind of another thing for me. And bodybuilding is not the only thing you can, that you can use to do that, right? You could choose to run a marathon or whatever that may be. But, and kind of Derek hit on this, but, the health aspect, it's like, I get to do this thing that I love, that I really have a passion for. And then the byproduct is that, like, we're in the top 10 or top 1 percentile of health, right? In health metrics, right? So that's like a byproduct of it, right? Like, I'm not even doing this to be healthy, right? But as it turns out, right, there's nobody that is walking around our ages that are as healthy as we are, right? So.
Right. Oh, yeah, my non-scale victory for me last year, I was getting a new set of life insurance because, well, Colin, our life insurance through our work sucks. So I found a private company, and when they did all my blood work, they were like, well, shoot, we can't charge you what we would charge a 47-year-old because all of your metrics are like that for a 25-year-old. I was like, bonus, I'll take it. So it's going to be cheaper for me to die now than it was a couple of years back, And I obviously, the proof's in the pudding, Philip and I are in our super late 20s, and everyone else is in their just a little bit later 20s. And, it's the closest thing to the fountain of youth. And I also, I'll throw another plug in. I'm in a cover band here in Cleveland called Third Monkey. And, granted, it's a bunch of drunk ladies that are hitting on a front man at a bar in Cleveland. But, the boost of the ego is not too bad once in a while. But Colleen, I still love you. You're there to every one of the shows, so it's all good. But, it's a beautiful thing. Now that you guys are all in prep, the one thing that I don't think a lot of people recognize is contest prep is no joke. What are some of the most difficult things you have to deal with during that?
Like existing is probably be the first thing.
Yeah.
No, like I'm very open where, like, I'll be honest, before I had kids, I was like, that's kind of a cop out. now that I have twin boys, I'm like, this isn't a cop out, bro. This fucking sucks. But realistically, it's just because it's a calorie count, right? I would argue that most other people, when it comes to, let's say you're on the enhanced side, you're looking at the possibility of having major health effects that have to do with kidney, liver, heart, blood viscosity problems, right? Our biggest problem is that we run out of calories, and so we get really tired, or we start cramping up, or we just don't want to do anything for the last couple of weeks. And I will say that let's take a look at that in terms of like the health aspect that we've been talking about for the whole time, right? Our worst health aspect is I'm not going out for the next couple of days in terms of seeing anybody because I'm just too tired. I'm really sleepy and I don't want to get sick. Okay, our unhealthy is I'm really thin and I don't have any calories and I don't want to drink a beer, so I'm just going to hang out at home, right? If that's our worst problem in terms of the health issues that we would have, I'll take it, right? And so for me, I would argue that the worst part about prep is how long a day can seem when bodybuilding isn't the only thing that you do, or I'll say personal bodybuilding, because even working in a gym, that last class of the day comes around, or that last client comes and I'm like, I really wish you would have canceled, but okay, here we go. So I can't imagine, Colin and you and even Phil, when he was active duty and competing, like, oh, look, here comes the enemy over the hill.
Oh man.
Anybody else?
I know for me, I got, wife, kids, dogs, all type of crazy stuff. And, it's really hard, obviously, to be in a house and I look in the fridge and there's spaghetti, there's cheesecake, there's brown muffins, and my wife's over here, laughing. But, she doesn't make it easy on me. Then she's Korean. She likes to cook Korean food. And, that's the thing. For me, I don't mind the diet at all. I actually love the food. I've gotten to a point over all these years. Obviously, all of us have probably done that, where we can make the, diet food and prep food taste good. You put the right amount of seasonings on it. I'm a meat eater anyway, so I love protein. I've come to enjoy having, oatmeal and putting some protein powder in it and make it taste sweet, and it's like candy for me. So you make it work, but it's, like Brandon said, the last 2 weeks are just torture. You don't want to go anywhere. You're in a bad mood and you're trying to do, like me, I've got to find a way to still be nice and cheery when I really don't feel like it, and not curse someone out, when you're driving or at work, when someone's like, hey, Phil, you should try this. Like, no, I can't. Why? Everyone's trying it, and I'm like, I said, no. You're trying to be as nice as possible. It just really gets tough, and if I do crack and snap at my wife, I feel bad and I apologize. But I think besides that, like Brandon said, it's still way healthier than the other side, and going the enhanced route where they're just, a little bit past that level to where they're trying to murder people. I think we can survive this, and we know that the finish line is, a couple of weeks away, and the reward is worth it. So, yeah.
Outstanding.
Nice.
Derek, you got anything to opine on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it from the standpoint, and obviously for me, just being a single guy, my friends want to go out all the time. So it's a matter of everything that they do is after 8 p.m. when I'm winding down at 8 p.m. and I'm not looking to go anywhere. So it could be a sacrifice of that social life and that social aspect, and even just a test of your willpower, because you are getting asked to do things constantly, and it does wear you down mentally in that aspect, especially as you get closer to prep, so you could tend to maybe shut yourself out. So having that support system and people that understand what you're doing, I feel like is key as well. Because I've heard that from other folks, where their family's not as supportive of what they're doing, as far as just understanding maybe them not wanting to eat the cornbread at the family gathering, so there's just aspects like that where it might be tough. You might have to go to the nephew's barbecue birthday and just bring your prepped food or drink your gallon of water. So, that's probably been a harder part, still going to events and just maintaining that prep mode for yourself, but also managing your sleep quality and, not being out too late with certain events that you might try to attend. So definitely like that social aspect and just maintaining those relationships with the people that are closest to you while you're in prep.
Right. Okay. Colin, what about you, boss?
Let's see. So I'm trying to think back. So our original question, like kind of hurdles during prep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Like Brandon talked about, is that, I have professionally, the busiest I've ever been in my life. So, here we are around the 1st of November, and I've spent 120 nights this year in a hotel. And so I am about to leave on a 17-day trip tomorrow. I got the World Cup and the Natural Olympia in the middle of there. It's just, trying to still provide that A1 product. I run a program at my agency, and I still need to be sharp there, right? Like, people know that I'm a bodybuilder. They have a lot of respect for it. They see the pictures, people pass it around, people, look at this guy, right? Like, they know what we're doing, when we leave the meetings and so forth, right? That I got to get my meals in, got to get my, the workouts in, or whatever that looks like, even when I'm on the go. But, and so I certainly appreciate having an environment where people are supportive, and even if people aren't supportive, people always respect what we do. And that's, Phil alluded to that early on. It's just that this sport, especially for guys like you guys that have really had tremendous success in the sport and compete at a really high level, it commands respect, right? And that's something that you can't look past. So I definitely, trying to maintain this busy lifestyle. Of course, I have a girlfriend, no wife, no kids, but I mean, I can't even really kind of imagine trying to do this like, Phil and Brandon with children, right? Especially with twin toddlers, right? Like, I mean, just incredible. Trying to, I always tell myself that I'm like, man, like, I'm going to get to a point where I'm just going to run out of time to be able to do this. But seeing you guys do it with families and so forth, kind of gives me hope. Like, hey, man, maybe I will still be able to do this, because I just can't get enough of it. So it's that's, I would say that's probably the biggest thing for me, is just trying to, try not to lose focus of either one of these these things that are most important to me. So.
Outstanding. Well, I know that you guys have things to do, especially twin toddlers. I do. Both of my kids are 25 and 23, so I don't have that problem
awesome.
anymore. I want to end on one thing, two things really. Brandon, you were talking about age and people a lot younger than us not getting things. I'm watching a lot of these kids walk around with Nirvana t-shirts, and it reminds me, like, back when I was their age, wearing like Led Zeppelin t-shirts. The difference is I probably knew most of the songs, because a lot of these kids are just wearing the shirt. I'm like, what's your favorite album? I don't know. So, Phil, I want to turn the table to you real quick before we go. Being that you have been in the sport almost as long as some of the younger guys have been around, what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody just starting to get into the sport, regardless of what age they are?
Wow, that's a tough question. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to keep doing it. You look at all of us, we each have been doing this, for 10 years or more. And the only way you're going to stay in this sport is you have to really love this, because it's obviously, we've all talked about how difficult it is, the challenges that we have to go through. But when you love it, and you love the results, you love the process, as Colin alluded to, which is, I think, really important. Being goal oriented, being disciplined enough to be consistent. You have to have that in you, because if you don't, you're not going to have the staying power. You're probably going to be wasting your time, to be honest with you, because, once you do one or two shows, if you don't fall in love with that process and being on stage, it's like you did all this stuff for nothing. But I think for all of us, and especially for myself, I feel like, that feeling I felt the first time I stepped on stage in 1992, how it was so awesome to have my first individual trophy instead of like sports, like, football, basketball, whatever, and nothing better. And I just continue to try to be better, find a way to improve myself, self-improvement. And it was a great journey, the journey that still goes on to this day. And so I would just tell somebody, if you're not willing to put in that work and do tough things, then you probably don't want to do this. But if you do it and you can, withstand all the things that encompass it, it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done. And it's one of the best lifestyles you can ever choose. The fountain of youth, the health aspects, everything else, if you do it the right way.
Outstanding. Well, gentlemen, I know you guys got to get to other things. I'm so very thankful for this. I'll put, if you guys send me your email where people can contact you, I know we gotta get ready to go. I'll put everything in the show notes so people can follow you and everything else. And hopefully we can do this again real soon. I gotta be living out of a hotel for the holidays, but we can make it work. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate y'all's time.
Thanks for
Awesome.
having us, Chris.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
I
Chris.
appreciate it.